And for that panel discussion, I invite on stage, and we are very, very pleased that she agreed to be here already, while she would also perhaps want to have time to prepare her keynote speech for this afternoon, renowned actress and women's rights activist Ashley Judd. Thank you. And of course, we are equally pleased to introduce here on stage Cindy Southworth from the United States, from the National Network to End Domestic Violence, which also has a safety net technology project. And her counterpart from Australia, Julie Oberin. Please join us. Antigone Davis, she's head of global safety from Facebook. And last but certainly not least, Brittany Smith, Google Public Policy Strategy from the United Kingdom. If I may start with you, Cindy, since you started this national network to end domestic violence in the United States, about the risks and the benefits of technology, of internet in particular. Maybe a little bit about the hazards of it first.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. The Safety Net Technology Project that I founded 15 years ago is to look at a whole bunch of things, but the hazards specifically, we're seeing abusers and perpetrators spoofing, which is pretending to be someone else. They are putting spyware on victims' phones. They are harassing, trolling, threatening, using every technology out there.
And can you say that technology makes abuse easier?
I would say it extends the reach. Many people think that digital abuse is a new form of abuse, and it's not a new type of violence against women. It's just a new tool that sexual violence, domestic violence, stalking, and other forms of misogyny are being used or perpetrated with. But it's not the actual abuse. Misogyny is misogyny. This just happens to be the way it's playing out today.
That's at the root of it?
Yes.
And this is a tool. May I go for a brief moment to you, Ashley, because talking about online harassment, you can speak from your own experience about that. Can you enlighten us a little bit of the impact of that kind of harassment?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. I really identified with what Emma said about that moment of hitting send and knowing it was a point of no return and that there would be no going back, because on my social media platforms, including Twitter and my public Facebook page, I had constantly over the years experienced an endless stream of pornography, hate speech, insults about my appearance, my political affiliation, you know, really ugly things even about family members. It's unbelievably how creative people can be when they're acting badly. And I really tolerated it. On occasion, I would use humor to respond. Sometimes I would be direct to someone. There was a guy, I remember I was living in Prague, of which your beautiful city reminds me a little bit, and he said something really disgusting, and there was a small child in his avatar with him. And I said, I have some feelings about this. Do you speak this way in front of that child who appears to be yours? And he wrote me back immediately and was accountable, and he said, you are right, I apologize. So I had some hope for the medium, but at the same time, the onslaught was perpetual. And I made a comment.
And did you grow accustomed, or was it like you felt you wanted to hide against it?
I have a couple of responses, and I think it's typical for all of us. Sometimes I get really big, right? And I get into this mode, right? And then sometimes I get really small, and I internalize the shame, and I take on something that was not mine to take on. But when I had this experience at an American sporting event, and it became clear that it wasn't about the sporting event and it was about being a woman, it was actually a man, my beautiful former husband, Dario, who called me up. And he said, babe, this is not okay. He said, what is happening to you is not okay. So it took a strong alliance with another human being who has my back, which is what that safety network is, which is what being connected is about. And that's when I experienced the up with which I would not put. That was my turning point. But when I wrote that essay in my nightgown at home alone, it was me and my God. It was me and, am I really gonna do this? And everyone thought it was a great idea, but they also were afraid for me. And they said, can you at least get paid for it? Wait a couple of years and write a book about it? And I just had to hit send. And I'm so glad
that
I did.
And we
because
are too.
the abuse became intensified and worse, but
Yeah.
look at us now.
Yeah, true. Cindy, I go back to you now because is it true what Ashley Judd just said, that that's the reason you started the Safety Net, to back women up when it comes to technology?
Well, absolutely. 15 years ago, when I started the Safety Net Project, most of the advocates that I was working with were terrified of technology. They were afraid of email, and yet the survivors coming into shelters and calling on the hotline were using those forms of technology. So it was really sort of throwing the gauntlet down to my sisters in this room and abroad and saying, if survivors are using technology, we owe it to them to learn how to use it, feel comfortable using it, and really master it, not be afraid of this medium. So I'm a big fan of geek girls. We need more geeky girls and geeky women out there.
Thank you. Julie Oberyn, I introduced you as the Australian counterpart of Cindy because you are from the Safety Net Australia. Could you give us a picture of who you are helping and in what ways in Australia?
Sure, I was excited to hear Cindy talk more than 5 years ago around this issue, and a lot of things really started to make sense with me. I manage a women's shelter in a regional city in central Victoria, Australia, and a lot of the women that we'd been supporting have been saying things like, it doesn't matter what I do, he keeps finding me and I don't know how. And some of the shelter workers were of the view that the woman was just paranoid, or she had a mental health issue, or that she was wanting to be found, or that she told him where she was. It all started to make sense to me. And then not long after that, we had 2 women in our shelter who were travelling by a public bus down to the downtown CBD to do some shopping. And at a bus stop, the perpetrator of one of the women got on the bus, walked straight down the back and pointed at her and yelled at her to get off the bus and come home with him. Now, fortunately, she was okay and the police responded really quickly. Everybody on the bus called the police and he was arrested. But he wasn't even supposed to know that she was in that town, and we worked out later that he was tracking her on her phone. So we started enthusiastically doing this training, and NNEDV have been amazing with their mentoring and support with the curriculum and the ongoing training. And we've been delivering it in Australia now for 4
But
years.
how can you people train against that?
Pardon?
How can you train women to prevent something like that happening? Because the tools are there, the GPS system is there. What can you do? Is it about awareness?
It is about awareness, and we've been training frontline workers who can then go and train their peers, who also then train the women to help with their safety planning around technology, to how to keep themselves safe and keep their privacy intact. We're firmly of the view that if we're going to achieve gender equality in this world for women, that they actually need full and free and safe access to technology. So like Cindy, we really want women to become techies.
Yeah. Brittany and Antigone, you are representing, of course, 2 of these very powerful tools. I think their sword is 2 sides. Eh? It's like hazardous and it's beneficiary when used well and appropriately. We absolutely don't want women to leave the internet, so we have to make them aware of how to work with it, how to deal with it. What can you do, Brittany, from Google to help women in their awareness and their strength and their way to deal with internet in a safe way?
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. I'm really honored and humbled to talk about these issues with you.
And you just joined us this morning, right?
Yeah.
So you're not really into the atmosphere everyone is in, but thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is really important to be clear about is that it's not true that anything goes on the internet. Our platforms have policies that have to be followed by our users, and we process all kinds of different reports and flags for all kinds of different violations for the rules that we have on our platforms. So that's one of the first things that I want to be totally clear about. Secondly, I want everyone to do at least one thing with their Google account settings today. If you have a Google account, it's incredibly important that you check the settings. Go into the settings because privacy and security are two sides of the same coin. We treat your privacy and security incredibly seriously at Google and give you as many settings and switches as possible to be able to take control of that. For example, with the security of your account, we have a log of exactly which device logged in, when, and where. And it's very important for you to be able to see that and that you track suspicious activity and that we notify you. When we see something that's like, hey, was that you? We'll send you an email and we'll let you know that someone tried to access your account. Was that actually you? I think that's incredibly important, both for practitioners and for victims and survivors.
Let me interrupt you for a brief moment because you say there, just go to the settings and know how to work with the settings. Because
Yes.
you can do a lot more than you think, maybe.
Yes.
Is this all about read the fucking manual? Or is this something that Google and Facebook can do themselves?
Absolutely not.
Because something like revenge pornography,
Absolutely
like photos
not.
posted, what can you do
Of course.
to help
This
us?
is not about reading the manual because this is actually not a manual. The settings are there. It's not just about reading the policy, for example. You have to take control. You have to go into the account and flick the switch on or off and make a decision about what information is shared about you when you use these products and services. And we make that as clear and easy as possible. When it comes to revenge pornography, to be 100% clear, this is not allowed on any of our platforms and services and also not allowed on our search engine. 6 months ago, we changed our policy about this so that when URLs...
But when you say not allowed, what kind of system is behind it to check and to...
There are humans. There are
Right,
humans. The
that's
best
good.
way for this to...
Women
this
even?
This is not a fancy machine or a scary algorithm. There are humans that look at that kind of material and say, look, this is not okay. And we process those requests from humans like yourselves to make sure that our platforms and services that people are using them the way that we designed them to be used.
Okay.
Revenge pornography is not allowed on Google in any way, shape, or form. And I think Antigone would agree with that.
But Antigone, I think it really requires some kind of digital literacy to use the internet. Let's not be too naive and romantic about it, right?
No, I think that's right. I think, first of all, you know, the mission of a company like Facebook is to give people the opportunity to share, to make the world more open and connected. That includes every woman. It's a platform for everybody. So one of the things that we do is give people the tools, but not only give people the tools, but actually educate right in line in the product. So we have something called Privacy Checkup and Privacy Check-in, and we will prompt you to go through and check those settings intentionally. We've tried to make it very, very easy for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Emma Murphy, I'm going to you because Facebook entered and Ashley, of course, was your entrance to the public domain and the public debate about violence against women. Do you have a specific question to these two ladies of Facebook and Google? Where do you think they can help women like you, like us, everyone, better?
For me, with Facebook, I just think it's so powerful, and I'm so blessed that it was there because there was no other way for me to actually get out of what I was doing. So I feel really lucky that we have that there, and I do feel there is some great blocks up. So we can block people if we get all this nasty stuff in. I know yourself, I got a lot of hate as well. It's normal, but it's great. I can just block them. So for me, Facebook has worked amazingly, and I'm happy with how it's worked for me.
Okay, and Ashley?
Well, there are a couple things I want to say. Number one is brain imaging shows that expressions of violence on the internet have the same effect on an individual as in-person physical violence. So every time I am re-exposed to hate speech, pornography on social media, it is a fresh traumatization of my brain chemistry. And it's that way for every person who witnesses it visually or reads it. And I understand about the digital literacy. I think that's important. The idea that came to me is, for example, when I'm at home and I get in my shower, I need to know the setting on my hot water heater. That is my responsibility. So just as I've got this utility in my home, I have a utility on the internet. What about, though, I mean, I think that our geography is a little interesting here because I'm a little like with you guys. So what about the person who sends me an image of my face and says, I can't wait to ejaculate on your face? And I get that kind of stuff in massive amounts every single day. And so why is it incumbent upon me, even using those settings, to go through every post and delete it? I now pay someone to do that, which is an encroachment on my financial liberty. My freedom of expression is constrained in so many ways simply by the fact that I was born female. And what I'm doing, of course, is empowered. My response is empowered. We now have, at the Women's Media Center, Protecting Freedom, Expanding Speech. And I turn all of that data over, and we are coding it. So with every post, this lovely person categorizes it: age, gender, appearance, intelligence, political affiliation, hate speech, pornography. You get the idea.
Yeah, and can you take over? Because it's really crazy that you should pay someone to do that for you. Is that your question?
It is, and it's a lot like the restraining order, and the way it used to be in America. And there's some progress now, where it used to be that the assaulted family member would say, "I want to be able to go to the store on Wednesdays between 8 and 9 o'clock," and that's when the assailant was not allowed to go to the store. She had freedom of movement that 1 hour a week. Let's reverse that. The assailant should have constraint on their freedom of movement, and the victim, empowered survivor, should be able to go wherever the hell she wants.
Yeah.
And I want to go wherever the hell I want on the internet.
Thank you. Antigone, can you speak a little bit more in the microphone?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, Ashley, if I could call you by your first name, if that's okay.
No, you can just
Maybe
call
you
me
should try
goddess.
to eat it a little bit, or take the other one. Yeah,
Is that better?
I think so.
So I think Ashley brings up some really good points. First of all, I think that there is an incredible connection between offline and online experience, and we've been doing some research actually that fully corroborates your personal story, which is that the impact of connections online is the same as the impact of connections offline. So the same emotional responses, the same fears are developed. And one of the things that we're doing off the platform to deal with this is we've just launched something called Inspire Ed. This is actually much more at the preventative scale, but this is getting kids educated about those connections. So it's a social and emotional learning to sort of prevent those types of responses posts in the first place. So that's one thing. But we are also working we're constantly iterating on our tools to try to develop new tools that would provide for a way for sort of for instance, a mass response, so that you could actually in a much easier way delete those posts. We're in the process of working on developing additional tools for people in these circumstances.
But it remains in a way an individual responsibility. I think, Cindy, where comes the SafeNet project on technology? Can you join, and where can you maybe help also Google and Facebook to really make this better?
We've been, for many, many years now, advising Facebook. We sit on their safety advisory board, and we're constantly trying to help understand the privacy and security settings. We created a joint guide around how survivors can safely use Facebook, and we're actually updating it right now. So we're constantly working on public education, and we're working behind the scenes under a non-disclosure agreement saying, hey, could you fix this setting? Could you change this? We want this change to make it easier for survivors. And some of our advocacy has been with Twitter to allow other people to report abuse so that Ashley doesn't have to read her own hate speech about herself.
So you also act in a way as a mediator between the individuals and the collective, in a way.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the same job that advocates do every day, advocating on behalf of one survivor. We're advocating on behalf of all survivors with the companies. And we're, behind closed doors, very, very frank about, hey, this is not helpful. We need to fix this for victims.
Yeah. And this is the same in Australia, Julie?
Yes, Facebook in Australia just asked us to try and translate that document into the Australian context, which is very good too.
Yeah. And when we are here together to connect and act, so I think some action might be necessary after today. What is your agenda for tomorrow? and the day after, of course.
Say one of the things that I would really implore this audience to do is we're talking about how individuals can use technology and how perpetrators misuse it. The missing piece for me is how agencies, organizations, and women's shelters use technology. And I love technology. I keep saying we want more geeks, but I also want people to use technology correctly and don't just adopt it because it's shiny and it's pretty. And so please do not create an app. There's enough apps. And an app will
Don't
not
do
end.
that, right?
It will not end hunger. You cannot eat your phone. So don't spend $200,000 to create an app to dial 3 buttons, 911 or 999. So some apps are lovely, but all right already, people.
Yeah.
Create the right technology and maybe use that money instead to hire another advocate.
Okay, great point. Ladies, we have to keep this brief because we have a very compact and tight schedule. So thank you so very, very much for your contribution. Thank you. And Ashley, I'm pleased to say that you're also your own cliffhanger this morning because